Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Dr. Igor Schwartzman. Today I wanted to share with you a few things about heartburn. Many of you may have experienced it once in your life, or many of you may know someone who's experienced it. It's extremely common. Now, where does the name heartburn come from? And what is it? Why do you have it? And what can you do about it? So those are the three things we're going to discuss in the next few minutes. Now, heartburn is not because your heart is on fire and it's burning, although when you're in love or you're inspired by something, your heart does speak to you. However, in terms of heartburn, the reason it's called heartburn is because of where it's located. It's close to your heart, and there's a sensation of something burning around this area. It's not always the classic symptom or how people experience it, but it's more common. What happens is that the burning that you experience here stems from the junction between your esophagus, which is the pipe where the food enters in the back of your throat, travels down, and passes through a sphincter called lower esophageal sphincter, which is right at the level where your ribs meet, and the junction is between your esophagus and your stomach, which is where the food enters. It's also the same exact area where any amount of acid that comes up through into the esophagus is what you experience, that burning sensation. So hence the name heartburn. Now, it's also known as gastroesophageal reflux, which means gastro is your stomach, esophageal is your esophagus, and reflux is coming up. Now, why do you need stomach acid? You need stomach acid for a number of reasons. Of course, stomach acid is extremely important in digestion, particularly when you eat protein-rich foods. Stomach acid does the job. Think about that. When you have enough stomach acid, your food, the fish you eat, the protein-rich legumes that you may consume, or chicken, and on and on and on, those foods are best to be broken down by adequate levels of stomach acid. Stomach acid is also extremely important in absorption of vitamin B12, and vitamin B12 deficiency is not uncommon. So stomach acid is important. What's interesting about heartburn is that most people consider that the reason you experience heartburn is because you have too much stomach acid, and it creates that burning. Turns out the majority of instances it's actually we don't have enough stomach acid. Let me explain. Physiologically speaking, what happens is this sphincter, lower esophageal sphincter, is taut, which means it's tight and closed in response to adequate levels of stomach acid. Your acid levels are extremely acidic, hence the name acid. pH 1 to pH 2 in chemistry would be extremely acidic. You can practically dissolve nails with that amount of acid. You know, if you look at your car battery, for example, if you have an older battery and you see all that bubbling stuff, that is acid. That's pretty acidic. It can burn skin. It can be quite destructive. Now, the good thing about our stomach is that we have protective layer of tissue, and it certainly doesn't cause you to burn yourself. Now, it so happens that when you don't have adequate levels of stomach acid, which means as the pH rises, pH 4, 5, 6, 7, pH 7 is water. It's neutral. It doesn't burn. You can drink it. So anything that's less than pH 7, greater than, in other words, if it's a pH of 6, it's still considered to be an acid, but it's a weak acid. What does that mean? That means you still have acid in your abdomen, in your stomach, but it's not conducive to digesting protein. It's not conducive to breaking down and absorbing your vitamin B12. No, nor is it conducive to keeping the lower esophageal sphincter taut or tight or closed. That means that flap begins to wobble. When that happens, you now have regurgitation of fluid coming into the esophagus, and that in fact can burn. So anything greater than water or anything more acidic than water can burn in your esophagus. So guess what happens when you see a doctor and you say, I have heartburn? Well, here you go, have some Tums or proton pump inhibitors and any acid blockers that you may take will obviously form the liquid in your stomach and make that water-like, which serves two purposes, right? Stomach acid is important to digest protein and absorb B12, so now you can do either one. And you're not absorbing your nutrients, nor are you breaking down your foods. So that's a problem. So stomach acid and having adequate stomach acid is important. In fact, before any prescription of acid blockers should ever be taken, you should always have a test. In fact, there is a test out there. It's called the Heidelberg test. You swallow a little pill essentially, and your stomach acid is measured. Now, most people don't do that. It's not cost effective to do that. It's a 3-hour test, and essentially you watch somebody's stomach acid over a course and period of time. Now, that's realistically the best way to know whether you need acid blockers to make sure you don't have too much stomach acid. But again, most of the time people don't have enough. Food sensitivities can be a reason for heartburn. That's right. You may have issues. You drink coffee and you've got heartburn. Yeah, you may not be able to tolerate coffee. Plus, it's more acidic. Yes, you may have food sensitivities to something you had eaten, and like tomatoes, and all of a sudden everything's burning up. So think about food sensitivities, and there are lots of them and many different kinds. That's reason number 2. So having lack of adequate stomach acid production and adequate levels, or food sensitivities. Now, what can you do about it? So let's say you have stomach, not fire, but you've got heartburn. You can do a couple of things. You can, 3 things. You can eat bitter greens with your meals, mustard greens, beet greens, and dandelion greens, and so on. You can take a half a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, which can help you elevate your stomach acid levels before each meal. So half a teaspoon of vinegar, apple cider vinegar, in a small amount of water before each meal. Or you can just smell it, and that will start producing the saliva response in your body. I can even think about it and start making the saliva. Or you can also take something that encourages and supports like digestive enzymes that contain a little bit of hydrochloric acid. In some instances, that is appropriate. So those 3 things can be extremely helpful. Now, do you think you have too much stomach acid? I don't know. Maybe you do, but that's less common. I welcome your questions. I'm so happy you were here with me today. Stay tuned for our next meeting, and until then, be well and stay well.